Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And my goodness, I have the most amazing, inspirational guest with us today. His name is Charles Smith. He is a lifelong survivor of multiple traumas, including being orphaned at a young age, being a homeless veteran, and surviving a suicide attempt. He is now an inspiration of proof that you can overcome the worst life has to offer and use your pain as a building block to support others. Along his journey, he found coping skills such as martial arts and exercise. And Charles has also worked as a private investigator, security consultant, peer support specialist, certified recovery advisor, and has authored multiple great self-help books. Charles, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Cheryl, and it's great to be here.
Boy, you have the most amazing story. And first of all, I do want to say thank you so much for your service. Really appreciate you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And I mean, I'm going to ask you I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us your story. Yeah, just take it away.
All right. Well, I was born in Worcester, Massachusetts. I started out with everything I could have dreamt in life. My father had multiple nursing homes, multiple pieces of land. I should have had uh, you know, my life set out for me. And then when I was about 3 or 4, he lost everything. And then my grandfather actually built a duplex for us to live in. And then my mother um passed away when I was 5 of an overdose, drinking and mixing pills. And then my father moved us around a lot of different places, Texas, Arizona, Connecticut. And I actually have a book out there called 10 Homes in 11 Years about that whole time. When I
Wow.
was, yeah, we lived on a Navajo reservation in Arizona. We lived on the border of Mexico. So,
Wow.
yeah, called Van Horn, Texas, which now is I guess a hotspot for NASA. So it's a lot better, more well known than it was back then. Last time I seen it, it was like a one street town.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
So as you're going from home to home, I mean, you said what, 11 homes in 10 years or the 10 in 11 years?
10 and 11.
What was that like? I mean, you were so young and trying to adapt to new schools and new neighborhoods.
It was
And
pretty hectic. And I never got like a good group of friends or any, lasting relationships or anything like that.
well, how could
So,
you?
yeah,
And you have a sister. So you did have a sister at the time. Is she younger or older than you?
she's a couple of years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
52. Yeah.
Okay, so when you guys were moving, was she trying to take care of you? Were you leaning on each other, or were you just both like shell shocked?
We were kind of, I guess, leaning on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we had the civil rivalry, but
Mm-hmm.
we also, had each other's backs too. So,
Mm-hmm. And then what
yeah.
happened when you were 11?
When I was 11, we ended up in Van Horn, Texas, and I woke up one day and out of the house that we were in, I could see my father making coffee, and I had a really odd feeling come over me. like something was gonna happen. I didn't know what, but I went over to him, I hugged him, I told him, I want to stay home from school today. And he's told me, no, you've already missed a lot of school. So after that, I went to the bathroom, shoved my finger down my throat to induce vomiting, and went back and told him, look, I am sick, I'm staying home, and after that, we dropped my sister off at school, and then we went to uh my we went to a nearby store, grabbed some supplies
Mhm.
like food, bread, milk, whatever. And then he passed out on me in the store. And then when he um passed out in the store, we the store clerk knew him and gave him orange juice to drink. He was a diabetic,
Mhm.
and that got him able to get us home anyway. And then when we were home, he passed out on me again. And then I ran over to my neighbor's house, and I got my neighbor, and we got my father to the hospital, and then I was holding his hand as he passed away.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
Okay, so now you're orphaned. It's just you and your sister, and you did have a relative come to get you. How long were the two of you alone before your relatives from Massachusetts intervened and came and got you?
Well, my sister had a friend out there, um, Beth, and her family owned a restaurant and actually lived in the back of the restaurant. It was like a house in back of the restaurant. And they took us in,
Mhm.
and it was okay with the police. And the police got a hold of my family. Luckily, it wasn't Smith, it was Dorenzo,
Mhm.
my family up here. So it's a little easier to track. And
Mhm.
I could imagine if they were looking for a Smith, especially back then.
Mhm.
But yeah, then my my uncle, my grandfather sent my uncle down to get us.
Mhm.
And at that time, I remember the people from the state were there at the same time that my uncle came to get us, and they were trying to, they were trying to take us, and my uncle's like, no.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, no, here's the paperwork from the judge. I'm taking them and get out of my way, pretty much.
Mhm. Wow,
Yeah,
thank God.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so basically you had to leave whatever life that you had at that point behind, all of your belongings and even your dog.
yeah, yeah, yeah. My familiar, as I call him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
How
yeah.
painful. I mean, you've lost everything.
Yeah, it was pretty pretty painful at the time. I mean, a lot of it I kind of subconsciously blacked out,
Mhm.
blocked out of my memory. Um,
Mhm.
even writing my book 10 Homes in 11 Years, I had to collaborate with my sister
Mhm.
because she has a lot better memory of it than
Mhm.
I do,
Mhm.
and she even told me when I came back to Massachusetts, I didn't have I was a mute, let's say, for like 6 months.
Mhm.
I didn't talk for 6 months to
Mhm.
anybody, not even her.
Mhm.
You
Which is
know,
completely understandable considering what you had gone through. But then I wonder, so okay, you're an 11-year-old boy who hasn't spoken for 6 months, who's gone through this incredible series of traumas. Did anybody lean in and say, hey, maybe we need to get you some help?
They did. My family took me to psychiatrists,
Mhm,
psychologists, and
mhm,
unfortunately, they didn't have a name for what I had back then. You know, who's
mhm,
gonna think that an 11-year-old kid has battle fatigue?
mhm.
You know, and we now
Which
know
is
it as
which is
PTSD.
really, yeah, which is really weird because I think anybody with a brain, a thinking brain, could understand that a child who had gone through so much trauma in a short period of time, even just one of those traumas by itself, would have been enough to, push them over the edge. It's way too much for an adult brain to take in, let alone a child's brain.
Right. Yeah.
So there was no treatment. There was no, they just said, hey, he'll be fine, take him home. And
Yeah, they couldn't really diagnose me. I mean, depression, anxiety.
mm,
I think once I had ADHD, well, they thought I had ADHD, but it was just not really a solid diagnosis. And then I
mhm,
just went on with life the best I
mhm.
could.
So
You know,
after all of this, how did you do in school? Because, okay, now you're in another new school, new kids, new
Mm.
environment, a new home situation. Everything is completely different. How did you assimilate to all of that? And again, how did you, in this child's mind, how did you wrap your head around all of that?
I wish I could tell you. I really
Mm,
do. I just I failed my way through college. High school.
mhm,
Like I tell my kid, I'm always on him for his homework because I'm like, you're not gonna be like me. I failed my way through. You're not
mm,
doing that, And luckily, I had a group of friends that really helped me through a lot.
mhm,
Because my family was there for me, but
mhm,
I really wasn't there for them. You
mhm,
know, in my eyes, my uncle and my aunt were trying to take the place of my mother and my father.
mhm,
So I wasn't gonna, have that, at that
mhm,
age.
mhm,
And I clung to my friends
mhm.
and
Well, I would imagine it would be really hard to trust adults at that point, not because they would be, doing anything terrible to you or they were untrustworthy. I don't mean that, but I would imagine it would be hard to get close to anybody who was an adult figure or, a pseudo parent figure because you never know when they're going to leave you as well.
yeah, no, that's still a trigger for me.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I tend to stay away from serious relationships and I have my son and I have my group of friends now,
Mhm.
but I tend to like my closest person is my son.
Mhm.
I don't have a girlfriend, a wife, or
Mhm.
anything like that because I really just it's not me.
Mhm.
I feel part of that is because of that. You
Mhm.
know,
You're protecting yourself.
yeah,
Mhm.
sort of a self protection tool.
Mhm. Yeah, which is
Yeah,
makes perfect sense. So you did get through high school. Did you graduate?
I did
Did they just want to get you out of the system?
probably.
And okay, so where did you go now? You're a high school graduate with a less than stellar academic record.
Mhm.
What happened then?
Then I actually went on to for postgraduate for a year in auto mechanics.
Mm,
And then I at the same time I was battling an addiction,
Mhm.
crack cocaine, which got worse and worse and worse. And it got to the point where I was told, get out, get a job, and don't come back.
Mhm.
You know, and so then I joined the military. I
Mhm.
joined the army infantry, and that was my detox off of crack cocaine. I quit drinking and stuff at the time too,
Mhm.
and now I don't drink
Mhm.
anymore either. I don't do anything really. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I would imagine that would be a pretty tough detox, especially, you
oh
know,
yeah, definitely.
that was boot camp.
Yeah, yep. 8 weeks of boot camp and then AIT, which was advanced infantry training.
Okay, so boot camp, as I understand it, is pretty rough.
Oh yeah,
And you were not in the best physical condition when you did join the service.
nope, not at all.
So what was it like trying to get through boot camp?
It was it was hell. I mean, they call it hell weeks, but it was hell. You know,
Mhm.
I luckily I had a couple of guys in there that knew what I was going through, and they really looked out
Mhm.
for me and really pushed for me.
Mhm.
You know, they had me on the floor doing push-ups and sit-ups every night. You
Wow.
know, and yeah, and so that was really great.
Mhm.
And
So I
then
have a question for you. Did you feel victorious
mm,
once you finished boot camp? And there must have been something inside of you, because if you were motivated enough to go into the AIT program, what was kind of going through your mind at that point?
I felt accomplished. I felt
Mhm.
I felt great about what I just did.
Mhm.
You know, and then going into AIT and then going home for a week and then off to my duty station in Colorado.
Mhm.
You know, it was great.
Mhm. When you went
You
home for
know,
your week before you, or a week or two before you were sent to Colorado, which, again, thank you for your service, and
you're
Colorado
welcome.
is a beautiful place to be.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yep.
what was the reception like for, I mean, the transformation that you had made must have been just remarkable to your family and your friends to see when you came home for leave.
It was. You know, it was really they were very proud of what I did.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And then how long did you serve?
3 years active duty and then a few years in reserves.
Yeah, and hang on. I know I have it written here somewhere in my notes. Oh, yeah. While you were in the military, you actually either were in or witnessed a tank explosion and riot control in Gitmo.
I was in a tank explosion.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. I that was in California, National Training Center. We uh we didn't have the our equipment when we
Mhm.
left Colorado to go to California. It was like training in real time scenario, and
Mhm.
we had to leave our equipment behind, and we would have grabbed the equipment that they had in California.
Mhm.
And when we had the Bradley that they gave us, we went through everything, seemed fine, but then we had a barrel misfunction that we didn't see.
Jeez.
Yeah. And when we went to test fire for the first time, I went to my job is to get out, check the barrel, make sure that it's locked into place, which I
Mhm.
did, and which I've done 100 times before, you know, and it seemed fine. And then I got back in and we fired, and suddenly it's the loudest noise that I've ever heard in my life. And the tank is filling up with smoke, and my crew is yelling. frantically, and I see the barrel flying downrange before my cockpit fills up with smoke, and I'm like, I was shaking. I was literally like, what the heck just happened? And from what people tell me, I got out. I lowered my ramp because Bradley has a ramp in the back for personnel to get in and out.
Mhm.
I lowered the ramp and I got my crew out, and they were severely burned and blinded for 6 months.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you don't even remember doing it. You
No,
just reacted.
I
Wow.
remember. Yeah, I remember. Like, my first real memory is days later. Um, I remember sitting in the back of a Bradley, which I think was mine. I'm not sure,
Mhm.
but yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, just out of curiosity then, after an experience like that or an incident like that, did the military step in and say, okay, let's give these guys some help, some emotional support, psychological support? Maybe they call it a debriefing. I don't know. Or did they just send you on your merry way once they treated the physical wounds?
They, I honestly don't remember if they did or not. They might
Hmm.
have done it right after the fact.
Hmm.
I didn't receive anything that I remember.
Hmm.
I remember my crew getting help for the burns and the blindness, but yeah, I don't remember anything to that effect. No.
Hmm. Did
No.
you ever work with that crew again, or?
Yeah, we stayed together we until I got out. I think I was the first one to leave.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that was just like your duty was up. It was
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so now what was reentry? Once again, now you're reentering into society after being in the military and having such a traumatic experience with the tank blowing up. And we didn't even talk about Gitmo.
Mhm. Um, which one do you want? Gitmo first or reentry?
Let's do the Gitmo first, because that came before the reentry.
Okay, all right. So we were sent to Guantanamo Bay because Cubans and Haitians were attempting to get over to the US. I think it was 1995.
Mm.
And they were doing anything and everything they could. Like,
Mhm.
if you have a desk in front of you, they were trying to get over and nothing bigger than that, in an ocean.
Yeah.
And just to put things in perspective, there was one kid that I still have a picture of. He lost his entire family in the ocean. Yeah,
Did
yeah.
he make it?
He made it, as far as I know. And as far as from the time that we were there, we kind of took him in and took care,
Oh,
made sure that he was taken care of.
oh, well, bless your
Yeah.
heart for doing that. But I'll bet you had a special place in your heart for him
Oh
based
yeah.
on what you went through and your experience, that you understood what he was
Yeah,
going
definitely.
through.
Yep.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
being in a strange land, and oh my God.
Yeah. 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 And we were there for 6 months. We had a lot of riots going on at the time too, because we they were trying to escape one imprisonment,
Mhm.
and we more or less put them in another imprisonment
Mhm.
in camps,
Mhm.
with barbed wire and
Mhm.
such and guard towers. So they rightfully so, acted up, for lack of a better term.
Mhm.
They didn't like the situation.
Mhm.
And we
Understandable.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Wow. Okay, so now let's go into the reentry. I mean, just my own brain is trying to, wrap all of these stories together and imagine what it would be like going from that. Then now you're going back to, I don't know, let's call it Main Street, USA, wherever, that your home was at the time. After
Mm.
all of these experiences of being in the military, what was that reentry like for you?
It was, I want to say it was normal at first. I got out, I got a job. I tried getting into corrections, working in the jail, but I had hurt my back and I didn't realize that I hurt it as much as I did, and I failed a PT test.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked in a couple of different jobs, and then I got into security
Mm-hmm.
and security consulting and private investigation work. And in 2001, my uncle and my grandfather um, passed away a month apart from cancer.
Oh.
Yeah, which put me in a tailspin.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure.
Suddenly, yeah, suddenly pushing them away all these years, I found was the wrong decision to make.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it just it affected me a lot more than I than anything's ever affected me. And
Mm-hmm.
I began like cutting on myself just to feel something other than what I was feeling, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I used a razor blade, so you really don't, unless you look really close, you really don't see any scars.
Mm-hmm.
And then one night I decided to end it. I just was tired.
Mm-hmm. Understandable.
Yeah, yeah. I I carved the words "F you world" in my arm.
Mhm,
Took a bottle of sleeping pills and attempted to end my life.
mhm. But you survived.
Yeah, because my friends found me
Mm,
and they called a paramedic
mhm,
and I got rushed to the hospital. And then from the hospital, I went to a VA hospital, psychiatric unit.
mhm,
And then after that, they tried to send me to a shelter in Boston because my friends couldn't have me back at that time. I
mm,
was living with them, and understandably, you know.
mhm,
And then I that place was full.
mhm,
The, so I ended up on the streets for I don't know how long. And then I eventually got into shelters.
mhm.
And yeah, yeah.
So then when did you kind of have that epiphany, so to speak, that wasn't the way to live and that you were going to turn your life around because you did kind of do a 180?
When I was in my home in the homeless shelters and on the streets, seeing fellow veterans, um, you know, I realized then that I wasn't alone.
Mm,
I don't know why Cuba didn't do it, or any of the other things that I've seen didn't do it, but
mhm,
that showed me that I wasn't alone in my pain,
mhm,
and that you know, I had to look beyond my own pain.
Mhm.
And that was my motivation to get out of the situation that I was in.
Mhm. And is that then at that point when you started focusing more on like exercise and martial arts as a coping skill? How did you get back? How did you, once again, assimilate yourself back into society after that experience?
Well, finally learning about PTSD and that I had
Mm.
PTSD, that was a huge one.
Hmm.
I believe that anytime we learn what is, you know, what is happening with us, we have the power to correct it.
Hmm.
And so that was a big help. And then just time, healing, time
Hmm.
of healing and working to get back on my feet, like not being comfortable.
Hmm.
Like I tell my clients now, don't get complacent.
Hmm.
Because I work in addiction recovery. Don't get complacent.
Hmm.
And that's the one thing that I couldn't do,
Hmm.
because a lot of the people that I was with, they were going to
Hmm.
be in that situation for the rest of their lives because they were
Hmm.
comfortable.
Hmm.
You know, once you get comfortable in a bad situation, you're not going to leave.
Right.
Yeah.
I still find it fascinating, and not in a good way, that it took so long for anybody to diagnose you with PTSD and explain to you what was happening.
Mm,
I mean, I would think just looking at your childhood, I'm no psychologist or psychiatrist, but I would have said right away there, well, hello,
yeah.
why did it take so long?
Well, I think that PTSD and like compounded PTSD, those were only in the medical field. They're still kind of sort of new.
Hmm.
You
That's
know.
very interesting that you should say that, because on my previous episode to this one, I actually interviewed a woman who had CPTSD. And
Okay.
she explained it to me. I think she's done a lot of research into psychology and that type of thing.
Mm,
And she said that, PTSD is now like a diagnostic, it has its own diagnostic code, but
mm,
complex or
that's
CPTSD
not
does not. And to
right.
me, I mean, I had PTSD and it
Mm,
was, a quite simple one incident, blah, blah, blah. And eventually I got over it. I recovered. Martial arts really helped a lot with that.
no, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah,
But
definitely.
I know what I went through, and mine wasn't complex. So I can't
Mm,
imagine. I mean, I had a good childhood, raised well, all that kind of stuff. I can't imagine what complex PTSD must be like. The hell that you go through.
yeah, it's horrible. I mean, it's to me, how I have it in my book, Operation Tip, is it's like a layer cake. Like
Okay.
like my mother's death and then my father's death and then this and then that and then everything else compounded on top of each other.
Mhm.
And so instead of having one trigger like you had,
Right.
I have multiple triggers. Like
Oh.
I was just talking to my psychiatrist earlier this morning, and he's brand new to me, so I was explaining everything. Like I have triggers, I have a short fuse. I
Hmm.
can get very amped up
Hmm.
in different situations. I like in Walmart because of the riots. I'm assuming because of the riots.
Hmm.
If if outed, I get what I can and I get out because I feel very anxious and
Hmm.
defensive.
Which is understandable.
Yeah, yeah. Especially if I have my kid,
Right.
I'm like a father lion defending his cub.
Right.
y-
Right.
and like enclosed spaces too.
Well,
I
yeah,
really
with the
yeah,
tank.
yeah, yep, yep. So it's both of those spectrums,
Mhm.
and then loss is a big one for me because of all the
Mhm.
loss I've suffered 20 significant 20 plus significant people in my life,
Mhm.
and then the smell of gas, diesel, and the list goes on and on for me, for my
Wow.
triggers, and
Wow.
that's how and it's treatable just like um PTSD,
Mhm.
just a little more in depth sometimes,
Right. Because it's so
depending on the
complex.
case. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, depending on the case. Like a lot of people, and I'm not saying this woman, but a lot of people have compounded PTSD because of domestic violence.
Mhm.
A
Mhm.
long period of time
Mhm.
instead of multiple triggers or multiple traumas like I've had,
Mhm.
having, one long period of
Right.
trauma. So
Mhm.
that's also complex, compounded PTSD.
Wow. Wow. So hang on. It
Yeah.
was okay. So you are, hang on. I'm looking at my notes and I'm not as organized as I thought I was.
Mhm.
So, oh, yes. So you work as a certified recovery advisor, and I'm really curious, your work with your clients, does that help you also a little bit with your PTSD as you're helping others?
Oh, definitely, without a
Mhm.
doubt. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I
And
you know, I get it. I tell my clients straight up, I'm like, I get as much out of this as you do.
yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah,
what prompted you to get into that kind of work to help other people with their recovery?
my mother and her
Mhm.
overdose. In 2016, my cousin, who I used to run with the crack cocaine,
Mhm.
I went into the military. He went into heroin, and
Oh,
he he went missing for 6 months in 2016, and I myself searched everywhere. We had a licensed private investigator helping out,
mhm.
trying to find them. We couldn't find them anywhere. On Christmas Eve of 2016, his body was found by a hunter and his
Oh,
dog.
oh,
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
thank you.
Oh,
And they had to do dental recognition to identify the body and all that.
mhm.
And there was drug paraphernalia along the line and some other questionable stuff around his body.
Oh,
So yeah. Um, so at that point, initially, this type of work began as an investigation of my own.
mhm,
I wanted to know the world that he was in,
mhm,
you know, and then you know, working in this field, I love helping others, and
mhm,
working in this field gives me that opportunity, so I stayed.
mhm. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
So now when did you decide to write your first book? So your first one, you're quite a prolific author, but your first book is the one about the again, I keep getting the numbers backwards, 11 homes in 10 years or vice versa.
no, that's one of my last books.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, yep, yep. Um, the first, this gets complicated.
Oh, that's okay.
Um, I started running groups like PTSD groups and self-protection groups and positive thinking groups.
Mhm,
And it wasn't once my son was born, that wasn't lucrative enough.
mhm,
So the programs that I developed, I made into books. So my situational awareness, my operation tip, and my positive thinking were my first 3 books.
Okay.
The first book that I wrote as a book is my addiction recovery book.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have that that's really one of my best sellers. I have um a bunch of different people who have been in recovery for more than a year shared their stories in that book. So people see it as hope that they can
Yeah.
you know
Hope for recovery, and you can
yeah,
recover from anything as long as you have the right support, the right environment to do so. It can happen.
right,
So
exactly.
I think you are definitely the poster child for that.
I've been I've
Probably.
been I've been referred to as a lighthouse before.
Oh.
Yeah, and that's actually become the logo for lifelongexperience.net. There's a lighthouse.
Nice. And then, okay, so the book, your memoir, when did that come out?
I think I wrote that in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, yep.
What
No,
was it like
yeah.
writing that? Because as you're writing a memoir, you're actually going through it's almost like you're experiencing it over again. Was it therapeutic? Was it triggering? I can't imagine what that emotional roller coaster must have been like.
It was an emotional roller coaster. Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. I mean it was going more like this. I'm talking about my story, but that was much more in depth,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I'm getting a lot of people asking me for the next book. And I'm finding myself really hesitant to do so because I know that I'm gonna be you know, reliving some of that 10 years in a lot of ways was some of the worst times of my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I wrote the first few pages, but I'm having problems getting by that I got a severe writer's block
Yeah. Oh, I
more
totally
in more ways
understand.
than one.
I get it. On
Mm.
the other hand, once you can put it to paper, imagine how many people you can help and impact with the story.
No, I know. Yeah, that's why I'm
Hmm.
pushing myself to do so.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
my second book is the Ninja book, and that's actually a memoir. And it was really funny because when I was writing it, it was right at the very beginning of the pandemic, and it was like, okay, I put this book off for so long, and I started writing, and one day I'd be down in the girl cave, typing, and I'd be laughing, and it was like, oh my gosh, that was so funny. The next day I'd start, pick up and with another story, and I'd feel myself getting angry. It's like, how
Mhm.
dare they do that to me? I mean, so I went through the entire thing, but when it was, it was finished, I was really happy with it until it was released.
Yeah.
And when it really got released, I just thought to myself, what have I done? I
Mm.
mean, I'm out there now and you can't get the genie back in the bottle. So I had
Right,
3
right.
really rough weeks, but I'm fine with it now.
Mm. No, it really is. And a lot of people, I've had some people say like, you know, do you think people are gonna want to read your story? I was like,
Hell
I would
yeah.
assume so.
I would read it, and I know most of your story, but I would read it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
imagine
I'm
how
like,
many people, veterans especially, or anybody else struggling with CPTSD that might not even know it really does exist. And they
yeah,
might
yeah.
wonder what is wrong with me.
Mm. Yeah, like I've done most of my life.
Exactly.
Yeah, yep.
Exactly. Wow. Well, Charles, I got to tell you, this is quite a story. And I'm so glad that you came onto the show with me today.
Oh,
It's an
thank you.
honor to meet you. And again, I cannot thank you enough for your service.
You're welcome. You're welcome. One thing I like to say at every podcast, I make sure I say it as, my attempt was 20 years ago, give or take.
Mhm,
Now I have a 10-year-old son,
mhm,
you know, um, you do the math.
mhm.
If I succeeded back then, he
Wouldn't be
wouldn't
here.
be here. Yeah, you know. So we just no matter how hard things get,
Mhm,
just keep pushing
mhm,
forward because things will get better. They I gotta believe that things will always get better, and
mhm,
now I'm looking to buy, I know it's not the best time, but I'm looking to buy a home in the next couple of months.
mhm.
I,
Congratulations and good luck.
thank you, thank you. I'm a author of multiple great books.
Yes, you are.
Talking to people like you, none of that would have happened
Mhm,
if I succeeded back then.
mhm,
You know, because I chose to, you know, end it early.
mhm,
You know, don't. If anyone has that, if anyone listening has that in their heads, go get help. If anyone
mhm,
knows anyone that might be thinking that,
mhm,
sit with them.
mhm,
Don't even try to rush them to the hospital or anything like that.
mhm,
Sit with them.
mhm.
You know,
That's great, great advice. Let me just ask you one more thing. So, with your addiction recovery program, is that something that's in person or online? Is it through an organization?
the tip pro the which one?
The addiction recovery
Oh,
that
the working with Aware. That's in multiple different states.
okay.
I what it is, it's such an amazing uh concept. I wish it was around years ago. But
Mm-hmm.
when I was working in detox and I was working in CSS and ATS, I never felt like I had enough time with the clients.
Mm-hmm.
But now with Aware, I have a year with the client.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And we
And,
meet the client where they're at.
okay, and that's the name of it is Aware because I want to include the link to that on the show notes because I think that's really
Aware,
important.
Aware Recovery Care.
Aware Recovery Care. Okay, I
Yep,
will look
yep,
that up. And,
yep.
okay, great.
And they're in multiple different states.
Okay.
Don't ask me all of them right now, but they're in
Okay.
multiple different states.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Excellent.
yeah.
And then, of course, your website is this is going to be in the show notes too, but I'd like for the guests to, share the link to your website or any social media or how they can get a hold of you.
Lifelongexperience.net.
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Is there anything else you want to say, Charles, before we wrap it up?
No, that's about it. Just thank you very much for having me on the show.
Oh, thank you for being here and thank you for sharing your story. It's really, really powerful. And I know you're helping so many people and you're going to help a lot more as time goes on. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And everybody, thank you so much for listening. Oh, please do share this episode with everybody you know. Let's get the word out about CPTSD and that there is hope. Let's get the word out of how many veterans really need help. Let's thank them for their service because without them, we wouldn't be here. Freedom is not free. And that is
Mm.
the way of the FemiNinja.